The call came on a rainy Tuesday morning, gray sky, cold coffee, and a sink full of dishes I was too tired to wash. I was still in my pajamas when the lawyer called. His voice was formal but kind, a tone I'd come to recognize as the professional way people speak when they're delivering unexpected news. My name is Elliot Grant. I'm the executor of your grandmother's estate. She named you as the sole heir. I sat down so fast my chair screeched across the floor. What? She left you the house, the car, her savings. Everything. My heart was racing but my voice came out quiet. Are you sure? There must be a mistake. What about my mom? Or Dylan? She was very clear, Savannah. In fact, she left a letter with the will, just for you. By the time I hung up, I couldn't feel my hands. Before we dive in, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. We're excited to connect with all of you, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more amazing content. Now back to the story. My name is Savannah Blake, and if you asked my mother to describe me, she'd probably say I'm the difficult daughter. The too sensitive, too stubborn, too independent one. I'm 28 years old, work part-time at a community center daycare, and live in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat in Garland, Texas. I clip coupons. I stretch meals. I've never asked anyone in my family for a dime, not even when my car broke down or when I got laid off 2 years ago and couldn't afford gas. And yet somehow I've always been the problem child. Growing up, my mom doted on my younger brother Dylan like he was made of gold. He was the golden boy, the chosen one, the kid whose C's were praised like A's, while my A's were expected. When I got accepted into UT Austin on a partial scholarship, she said, "Well, don't expect me to help if you end up wasting money chasing some nonsense degree." When Dylan dropped out of college after one semester, she comforted him with hugs and tacos from his favorite place. So when Grandma June passed, I never even imagined she'd leave me anything. Grandma was the only one who saw me. Really saw me. She taught me how to sew, how to budget, how to make the best banana bread with day-old bananas. He told me I was strong. She always said, "Savvy, sometimes it's not that they can't love you. It's that they don't know how to love anything they don't control." The letter from Grandma was handwritten, shaky in places, but every word was filled with love. She said she wanted me to have the house and the money because she believed in my dream of opening a daycare. She said the rest of the family already showed me who they are, and she hoped this gift would help me build a life without begging for crumbs. That part made me cry. It took me 4 days to gather the courage to tell my mom. I waited until Sunday afternoon when I knew she'd be home from church and less likely to scream on the phone. I called, my fingers trembling as I tapped her contact. She picked up on the second ring. "Savannah. Finally. I've been wondering if you were going to call and offer condolences, or if you were just going to stay quiet like you always do." I swallowed. I was trying to process everything. I didn't know how to bring it up. So, what did the lawyer say? She left everything to me. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. "What do you mean everything?" "I mean the house, her car, her savings. All of it." There was another pause, longer this time. "Well, I'm glad she did the right thing," she said slowly, voice sweet like poisoned honey. "So you'll be able to help out now." Help out. Dylan's student loans are drowning him. And I still owe on the second mortgage. We'll need you to take over the property taxes at least. And Dylan's car is in rough shape. Maybe you can give him the Corolla. No. She went quiet. "No, Mom. I'm not giving Dylan the car. And I'm not paying your mortgage." "Excuse me. I'm going to fix up the house and start the daycare. That was Grandma's wish." "I'm sorry, but I can't." "You selfish little girl," she snapped. "That house was supposed to stay in this family. Do you really think Grandma meant for you to hoard it all for yourself? She meant for me to finally have a life that wasn't about sacrificing for other people." "Wow. So this is who you are now." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She ended the call with a clipped, "Fine. We'll talk later." A week later I got the text. "Family meeting at Aunt Cora's this Saturday. 5 p.m. sharp. We're settling this." At first I ignored it. But part of me, some broken hopeful piece that still longed to be accepted, made me agree. Maybe it would be a chance to explain. To show them I wasn't trying to be cruel. Maybe deep down I still wanted them to say, "We're proud of you." So Saturday came and I drove across town to Aunt Cora's 2-story red brick house. The same one where we'd had cookouts and birthday parties and where I'd always been told to stay out of grown folks' business. When I walked in, every face turned to me. My mom, Aunt Cora, Uncle Rick, even my cousin Jasmine, who I hadn't seen in years. I smiled nervously. Hey. No one said it back. We sat around the dining table, an untouched bowl of chips in the center. My mom took the lead. Savannah, she began with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. We're all here because we care about you, about this family, and we want to talk about what's fair. Dylan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Yeah. Like why you think you get to keep everything when we all loved Grandma too? I stared at him. You hadn't visited her in 3 years. So, she was still my grandma. I looked at Aunt Cora. She made her decision. It's legal. I don't know what you all think this meeting is going to change. My mom slid a folder across the table. We just want you to read something. It's a power of attorney form. It would allow me to help manage the estate. Make sure things are handled responsibly. I didn't even touch it. I'm not signing anything. You don't even know what you're doing, she said, voice rising. You're impulsive and emotional and not easy to control. Got it. Her face changed. The mask slipped. You ungrateful brat. After all I've done for you. Done for me. I laughed, but it came out sharp. Like calling me a burden when I was 17 and needed help with FAFSA? Or like telling me to figure it out when I didn't have rent during the pandemic? Aunt Cora hissed. Don't speak to your mother like that. I stood. I came here thinking maybe, you all would respect what Grandma wanted. But this is just another attempt to take from me. You owe us. Dylan shouted. You wouldn't have anything without this family. No, I said, voice steady. I wouldn't have trauma without this family. My mom slammed her hand on the table. Then get out. Go play queen of your little house. But don't come crying when you realize what you gave up. I walked to the door without another word. But before I stepped out, I looked over my shoulder and said, I didn't give anything up. I just stopped giving in. And I left. That night, I sat on the floor of Grandma's living room, surrounded by old photo albums and musty furniture, and I cried, not because I was sad, but because I finally understood something painful and liberating. Sometimes the biggest betrayal isn't what your family takes from you. It's what they never gave in the first place. Now I was finally done begging for it. I didn't sleep that night. Even though the house was mine now, it didn't feel like home yet. The shadows clung to the corners like ghosts, and every creak of the wooden floor made me flinch. I kept expecting the doorbell to ring, expecting someone from the family to come back and try again, to talk me into giving it all up. I even moved the envelope with Grandma's will and the property deed to a drawer under the sink, just in case someone broke in and tried to take it. I didn't trust any of them. Not after that meeting. Not after the way Dylan had looked at me, like I was a thief instead of a sister. The next morning I got up before the sun. I didn't bother with makeup or breakfast. I just sat outside on the front steps with a blanket over my shoulders and watched as the sun crawled up the sky and turned the dew on the grass to steam. I had so much to do. The house needed fixing, badly. The roof sagged, the porch was half rotted, and the plumbing groaned every time I flushed. But even broken, the place was mine. I held on to that word like it was armor. A few days passed without word from my mother. It was too quiet, unnerving, like the calm before a tornado. I kept checking my phone, half hoping for a message, half dreading it. What came instead was a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the curtain. My stomach twisted. He was standing on the porch with his arms crossed and sunglasses on, like this was just a casual drop-in, like we were still siblings who talked and laughed and didn't just throw verbal knives at each other across a dining table. I opened the door just wide enough to see him. What do you want? He shrugged, smiling like we were kids again. Can I come in? No. Seriously, Save. I just want to talk. You made that pretty clear at Aunt Cora's. He dropped the smile. That wasn't cool, all right? We were all just surprised. Mom's freaking out. She thought Grandma would be more fair. Fair. I laughed. You mean give you something you didn't earn? You think you earned this? I was the only one who showed up for her, I snapped. You couldn't even text her on Christmas. She was old. She didn't care about that stuff. Yes, Dylan. She did. He exhaled hard, adjusting his hat. Look, I just wanted to say Mom's not gonna let this go. She's already talking to a lawyer. She doesn't have a case. Doesn't mean she won't try to make your life hell. I leaned against the doorframe. So what? This is a warning. Or a threat. He looked down then back up at me. Honestly, I don't know. Just be careful, alright? I didn't respond. I shut the door. He didn't knock again. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt hunted. The next day I changed all my passwords. Email, bank, everything. I had a weird gut feeling and Grandma always said to trust that over anything. I even put locks on the inside of the bedroom door. Paranoid? Maybe. But with my family, paranoia was a survival skill. Then a week later it happened. I got a call from a woman named Megan. She was a social worker. I'm following up on a report, she said. Someone expressed concern about your mental health and your ability to handle your finances. We're required to check in when we receive these kinds of reports. I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. Wait, what kind of report? It was anonymous, but they mentioned erratic behavior. Isolation. Financial confusion. Oh my God, I whispered. You think I'm not fit to live on my own? I don't think anything yet, Miss Blake. That's why I'm here, to assess. I invited her in. My hands were shaking. I gave her a tour of the house, offered her tea, showed her the business plan I was building, the permits I'd already filed for the daycare. She nodded, took notes, asked gentle questions. At the end, she closed her notebook. I don't see any cause for concern. You seem perfectly competent. But you should know, someone went to a lot of effort to make it sound like you weren't. I wanted to cry. Instead, I smiled like it didn't hurt. Thank you for telling me. As soon as she left, I went to the drawer under the sink and pulled out the folder. I held the deed in my hands like it was a life preserver. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't unstable. I was just the target of a family that hated seeing me with something they couldn't control. That night, I called the estate attorney, Elliot. I think my mom is trying to build a case that I'm unfit, I told him. She sent a social worker. She's trying to make me look incompetent. He sighed heavily. This isn't uncommon. Families can get aggressive, especially when money's involved. But her efforts won't hold in court unless she can prove fraud or mental incapacity. She can't prove either. Then you have nothing to worry about. Still, I'd recommend documenting everything. Every call, every visit. Save all messages. Just in case. I started a file that night. I called it insurance. Over the next few weeks, I kept to myself. I worked on the house during the day and studied licensing requirements at night. The daycare was becoming real, almost tangible. I could see it in my mind. Tiny tables, colorful walls, laughter echoing through Grandma's old living room. But peace never lasted long with my family. One afternoon, I came home from the hardware store and found the front door wide open. My heart stopped. I rushed inside. Nothing was missing, but drawers were pulled open. Paperwork scattered. My laptop was still there, but someone had been digging. I called the police. They said there were no signs of forced entry. Probably someone who had a key, the officer said. I knew exactly who that someone was. I replaced the locks that same night. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I called a private investigator. Her name was Lena. She was short, sharp-eyed, and didn't blink much. After I explained everything, she nodded like it was just another day. I'll dig into your mom's finances. Her history. I'll find out what she's planning. Why would she be so obsessed with this? I asked. Lena didn't hesitate. Because your success makes her feel like a failure. A week later, Lena came back with a folder. Inside were receipts, emails, even a record of a conversation between my mom and a local lawyer where she asked about contesting the will. But the best part was a statement from another cousin. Someone who said my mom had borrowed money for the family and never paid it back. She's done this before, Lena said. Manipulated relatives, guilt-tripped them into handing over their inheritance or benefits. But none of them had proof. You do. I stared at the file, my hands suddenly steady. I felt no fear. Only clarity. If my mother wanted a war, she was going to get one. But it wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be emotional. It would be calculated. I made copies of everything. I filed a cease and desist letter through Elliot to prevent further contact. I changed my phone number. I blocked her on every platform. The next time she wanted to reach me, she'd have to go through a courtroom. I didn't cry again. Not even when I found out Dylan had tried to access my bank using my old email password. I simply reported it, logged the incident, added it to the folder, and kept moving forward. I started repainting the nursery room. Lemon yellow. Bright, warm, and full of hope. Just like Grandma would have wanted. By the time the first licensing inspector walked through the door, I was ready. I had turned the place from broken to beautiful, from haunted to healing. And all without asking my family for a damn thing. The day the cease and desist letter reached my mother, I knew. I didn't need to see her face or hear her voice to feel the earthquake ripple through our family. My Aunt Cora texted me something cryptic. "You went too far this time," and then blocked me. Dylan unfollowed me on everything. Even my cousin Jasmine, who once begged me to teach her how to budget, stopped liking my posts. Just like that, I was the villain. But what none of them understood was that I'd been their scapegoat long before I had anything worth protecting. Long before the inheritance. Long before I said no out loud. This time, though, I wasn't going to apologize. Not when Grandma June gave me a future they never wanted me to have. Still, even with all the new locks and paperwork and the investigator's file tucked in my kitchen drawer, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It started small. Mail opened, moved around. A car I didn't recognize parked across the street 2 days in a row. Then came the anonymous reviews on my daycare registration page. Unstable woman. Do not trust with your children. Money-hungry girl who abandoned her family. They used words like girl and unstable deliberately. Words that twisted the truth just enough to sound like concern. I had to take down the page. The licensing process wasn't even done and already the sabotage had begun. I tried to call the inspector assigned to my daycare application, just to explain the situation, to stay ahead of whatever rumor was headed her way. She was polite but distant. "You've had a few complaints lodged against you," she said. "All anonymous. I know where they're coming from. I'm not here to judge your family dynamic, Miss Blake. But if we receive enough negative reports, we have to pause the licensing review. It's about protecting children, not personal issues." I thanked her, hung up, and sat still for almost an hour. That was their plan. Not to win. Not even to take what was mine. Just to make me unworthy of having it. They couldn't reverse Grandma's decision, so they were trying to poison the fruit before it ever grew. I called Lena, my private investigator. "They've stepped it up," I told her. She didn't sound surprised. "You need to go on offense. Not just defense. You've got the receipts, Savannah. It's time to make them mean something." I hesitated. "You think I should go public?" "I think you should start acting like you're not ashamed. Because you have nothing to be ashamed of." That night I wrote everything down. I sat at my laptop and poured it out, from the moment I found out about the inheritance to the meeting at Aunt Cora's, to the fake social work complaint and the smear campaign. I didn't name names, but I told the truth. The kind of truth that bleeds a little when it's spoken. Then I posted it. On a new blog. On Reddit. On a local Facebook support group for women escaping toxic families. I didn't want pity. I wanted anyone else in my shoes to know they weren't alone. And if my family saw it, good. Let them stew in the truth they tried so hard to bury. Within days I got dozens of messages. Strangers telling me they saw themselves in my story. That they too were made to feel guilty for surviving. That they too had been the black sheep until they finally said, enough. And slowly the narrative shifted. When the inspector came for her final visit, she saw the room I'd built. Sunny, safe, full of life. And then she looked at me and said, "You're not the first person I've met with a vengeful family. But you're one of the few who didn't let them win." I cried in the bathroom after she left. Quiet tears. The kind you cry when you've held your breath too long. A week later, my daycare was officially licensed. I named it June's Place. It opened with just 3 kids. But they were the right ones. Kids from single moms who needed flexibility. Parents who couldn't afford glossy institutions with waiting lists and uniforms. I cooked snacks from scratch, told stories during nap time, and used every trick Grandma taught me to stretch pennies into magic. And for a few precious weeks things were calm. Then came the letter. It wasn't from my mother. It was from her lawyer. A civil suit. She was suing me for undue influence over Grandma June. Claiming I manipulated her in her old age. That I alienated her from the rest of the family. That I exploited her mental decline for personal gain. The words blurred as I read them. It was all lies. Every line. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that now I was being dragged into court. And that's when I realized, this wasn't just revenge. This was punishment. For leaving. For not giving in. For becoming something without their permission. I sent the letter to Elliot and Lena. We got to work immediately. Lena pulled statements from Grandma's nurse, a woman named Marcia who'd been with her for years. She wrote an affidavit detailing how sharp and clear Grandma had been, how often she spoke about leaving the house to me, how proud she was of what I was building. We got copies of Grandma's journals, notes in the margins of her recipe books, receipts with scribbled reminders like, "Ask Savvy about the permit," and a birthday card she never mailed that said, "I believe in you even if no one else does." But the best piece came from Lena's digging. It was a voice recording. One I didn't know existed. Grandma in her creaky voice talking to the lawyer a year before she died. "My daughter never showed up when I was sick. She wants money, not responsibility. Savannah's the only one who visits, who listens. She's the only one who deserves this house. She'll do something good with it. I want her to have it." I cried the whole way through. Then I saved it. The court date was set. 2 months out. In that time the pressure got worse. My mother showed up once, banging on the daycare door during nap time. I had to call the police. She was escorted off the property screaming, "You ungrateful snake." I got more fake reviews. One parent dropped out scared by the drama. But the rest stayed. One even hugged me and said, "You're stronger than most people would be." I didn't feel strong. I felt tired. Tired of proving my worth. Tired of shielding myself from the people who were supposed to protect me. But I showed up anyway. Because if I didn't, they'd win. And I wasn't doing this for revenge anymore. I was doing it for every little girl who got called too much, when she cried, and ungrateful when she stood up for herself. The night before court I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house with a flashlight, checking locks I'd already checked twice. Then I stopped in the kitchen. Grandma's old apron was still hanging on the wall. I put it on. It smelled like cinnamon and old soap. And for the first time in months I felt calm. They were going to try to strip me down in court. But they couldn't take what I'd already survived. They couldn't rewrite the nights I sat with Grandma when her joints hurt too much to sleep. They couldn't erase the voice in that recording. They could smear my name, drag me through mud, try to break me in front of strangers. But I'd walk in with my head up. Not just because I had proof, but because I had truth. And this time, that would be enough. The courthouse smelled like cold paper and disinfectant. It was early, too early for this kind of confrontation, but I was already dressed, seated on the stiff wooden bench outside courtroom 2B, my fingers clasped around the manila folder that held everything. Grandma's voice recording, the nurse's affidavit, my own time-stamped proof of the life I'd built. My mother walked in 15 minutes late. Not that I was surprised. She never did show up on time unless there was a gift bag waiting. She looked like someone walking a red carpet. Long cream coat, her best heels, that designer purse she swore she couldn't afford but had anyway. Her lawyer followed close behind, stiff and corporate in a navy suit. She didn't look at me. Not once. But I watched her. I watched the way she smiled at the bailiff, the way she adjusted her necklace like she was preparing for a photo shoot instead of a lawsuit. She wasn't afraid. She thought she'd win. The judge was a woman in her 50s. Worn but sharp, the kind of woman who'd seen every family betrayal play out like a soap opera and knew exactly what to ignore. I liked her instantly. The hearing started like all court hearings do. Dull formalities, documents passed around, both attorneys setting the stage. But the tension in the air was thick, a thread pulled tight, waiting to snap. Her lawyer went first. He painted me as manipulative, cunning. Said I'd taken advantage of a vulnerable old woman, isolated her from her real family. Said Grandma's dementia was an open secret, and implied that I'd gotten her to rewrite the will while no one else was around. She moved into the house under the guise of caregiving, he said. But our client believes it was part of a long-term plan to claim assets that were meant to be shared. It was like watching a stranger's life be dissected in front of me. Only it wasn't a stranger's. It was mine. Then it was Elliot's turn. He rose calmly and laid out the facts. He walked through the timeline. Grandma's will had been drafted 2 full years before she passed. No dementia diagnosis. No undue influence. He submitted medical records, receipts from her independent physician visits and, finally, played the audio file. Her voice filled the courtroom. Firm. Loving. Savannah's the only one who shows up. She listens. She helps. She's the only one who deserves this house. The judge leaned forward, listening intently. My mother turned pale. Her lawyer tried to object, claiming it lacked context. But it was too late. The damage was done. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up and faced the bench. I didn't ask for any of this, I began. But I also didn't run from it. I told them how I'd cared for Grandma June when no one else showed up. How I cooked her meals, helped her walk when her knees gave out. How I gave up weekends and vacations to sit with her in that peeling, crumbling house while the rest of the family sent text messages twice a year, if that. I told them how the moment she died they circled like vultures, not out of grief but greed. They didn't want the house, I said. They wanted to make sure I didn't have it. Then I told them about the fake social worker visit. The anonymous complaints. The break-in. The campaign to destroy my daycare's reputation before it even opened. All because I didn't give them what they thought they were entitled to. I didn't cry. Not once. I saved my tears for the days when I had to rebuild my entire life alone, not for the courtroom where I was finally defending it. When I sat down, the silence was heavy. The judge called for a recess. My mother still didn't look at me. But I looked at her. And for the first time I didn't feel guilt or fear. I felt pity. When the judge returned, she didn't take long. She dismissed the case. Not only was there no evidence of undue influence, she noted, but there was overwhelming proof of deliberate harassment against me, including a warning that further action from my mother could constitute defamation or stalking. It was over. Just like that. I walked out of the courthouse into a dull gray afternoon and felt the sky crack open inside me. I should have felt joy. What I felt instead was release. Like I had been holding my breath for years without realizing it. But the story didn't end there. Not really. Because a week after the ruling, my mother showed up again, this time at June's place. She didn't come inside. She stood across the street in that same white coat, just watching. I stepped out onto the porch and folded my arms. What do you want? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "You embarrassed me." I stared at her. "You sued me. You made a mockery of this family. No. You did that when you put money above your own daughter." She flinched. Just a flicker. Then she crossed her arms. "I just thought you'd do the right thing." "You mean give you what Grandma gave me?" It wasn't hers to give. Those words hit harder than I expected. Because there was her truth. She'd never seen anything Grandma owned as Grandma's. She saw it as hers by default. Because she was the daughter. Because she thought the world owed her even as she gave nothing back. "You don't even miss her," I said. "Don't tell me how I feel. You didn't even cry at her funeral." She looked at me like I was a child. "You don't understand what it means to carry the weight of a family. You think you're strong because you won in court? That's not strength, Savannah. That's selfishness in a pretty dress." I let the silence hang. Then I said, "If being strong means not becoming you, then yeah. I'm strong." I turned and went back inside. And she didn't follow. That was the last time I saw her. At least in person. But her shadow still tries to follow me. Sometimes in gossip. Sometimes in a new fake review. Sometimes through relatives who whisper, "You should just forgive her. She's your mother." But I've learned something important since all this started. You can forgive someone without letting them come back in to break you all over again. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the blade they held to your throat was a misunderstanding. It means taking the blade away and never handing it back. June's place is thriving now. We have 9 kids. A wait list. Parents who trust me. Kids who call me Miss Savvy, and draw me crayon portraits that hang all over the kitchen walls. I hired a part-time assistant, a retired preschool teacher named Miss Claudette, who brings homemade applesauce and sings like Aretha Franklin. The house is alive again. And so am I. Every morning I light a candle in the window for Grandma June. It's not for her soul, I know exactly where she is. It's for me. A reminder. That love doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. That justice doesn't have to be cruel to be complete. And that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's peace. Real, steady, earned peace. The kind my mother will never know.